Tales for the Midnight Hour. The Furry Collar. Susan was my best friend, but I try never to think about her. It's only on certain nights when I'm all alone in my room that I remember. It was during Christmas vacation last year when Susan asked me to stay at her house overnight. She lives in a big gloomy house set way back from the road, and she didn't want to be alone there at night. Parents had gone to visit some friends and wouldn't be back until the next afternoon. Susan said we could have a really good time without her parents around, and we did. At about 12 o'clock, we decided to get dressed for bed. Susan had gotten this velvet nightrobe for Christmas that had a thick furry collar. It was blood red velvet, and she looked like someone from a Dracula movie in it. We had been watching television in the living room, but then we turned it off. We hadn't noticed it before, but now the downstairs seemed too big, almost sinister. We started to go upstairs, then all of a sudden we both ran up the stairs to Susan's room as if something was coming up from behind us. After we closed the door, we laughed at ourselves, but neither one of us wanted to leave the room again. We sat down and started to talk. That's when we first heard the noise. It sounded like somebody sharpening a knife on an old emery stone. We stopped talking and looked at each other, feeling really scared inside. There was just a thick silence in the room. Suddenly, Susan started to laugh. She said she had heard that sound like that before in the house. Said it was probably the shutters or something. That made me feel better, and we started to talk again. Then we heard it again.
If you did, I did too.
The sound made my teeth vibrate as if somebody's fingernails were scratching on a chalkboard. But this sound was much worse. It shrieked up from the dark, lonely room below us. Susan got a wild look in her eyes, as though something horrible had come into her head. Before I could catch her, she ran out of the room, slamming the door shut and flicking off the light switch. I heard the footsteps as she ran down the first flight of stairs and then stop. I sat in the dark, sick with fright. I called out Susan's name, but my voice was answered by hushed silence. I didn't want to stay in the dark room alone, but even more, I didn't want to go into the other darkness. I heard it again, that disgusting sound. Then I heard Susan's footsteps moving down the next and final flight of stairs. She went more slowly, as if she really didn't want to. I heard her reach the bottom. I waited in the room, wondering what Susan was doing. I told myself she must be all right. You see, the noise had stopped right after I heard her reach the bottom of the stairs. It didn't come after that. Susan had probably just fixed the shutter. Maybe she had known for sure about that all the time. She had just acted strangely to scare me. Maybe she was sitting on the steps now, laughing at me. I got up and started toward the door to turn on the light, but a feeling of fear swept over me and held me back like a hand against my throat. I decided I would wait where I was for Susan to return. I would wait there until her parents returned if necessary. Nothing could make me leave my darkness for the other, darker unknown outside the room. Time passed. My ears strained for a sound. My nerves tingled at imagined shadows. Then I heard a slow, shuffling noise on the bottom step. Was it Susan? It had to be. Yet, the footsteps seemed too heavy, too deliberate. My heart began to pound, and for a moment I lost control of my mind. It flew to the most horrible corners of my imagination, and I shook with terror. Then suddenly, I knew what I would do. Susan's new nightrobe with the furry collar. I would wait for the door to open, then I would reach out and touch the person's neck. If I felt the furry collar, I would know it was Susan, and I would get her back for scaring me like this. If I didn't feel the furry collar, well, there was nothing I could do. The shuffling footsteps had reached the second flight of stairs. I forced my own feet to take the steps to get near the door to my room. I felt the skin crawl on the back of on my back as the footsteps reached the top step and moved down the hallway. I braced myself. The door creaked slightly as it swung open. I reached my arms out and hoped. My fingers closed around the thick fur of Susan's collar. My body drained with relief. I moved my hands up to reach Susan's face. I was so happy I no longer wanted to scare her. But as my fingers moved up from the furry collar, there was nothing. Only the bloody stump where Susan's head had been.